entryway. The sound was so familiar it made Lila's chest ache. She had heard that creak 1,000 times as a child, rushing in from playing outside, coming home from school, sneaking out after bedtime. Once, it had sounded like home. Now it sounded like a reminder of everything broken. The air inside the house was cool and still, thick with the scent of old wood, lavender cleaning spray, and faint, lingering nostalgia. Sunlight streamed through the tall front windows, cutting golden slants through the dust motes floating in the air, illuminating the quiet emptiness of every room. Aunt Clara had kept her promise. The house was spotlessly clean. The hardwood floors were polished, the furniture dust-free, the beds made with fresh linen, the bathrooms sanitized. But cleanliness could not fix the hollow feeling that hung over every corner of the space. This house was no longer lived in. It was preserved. A museum for a dead family's memories. Lila stepped inside slowly, her sneakers silent on the wooden floor. Her eyes scanned the entryway, the wooden coat rack where their jackets had once hung side by side, the small console table where Mia had left her tiny rain boots every winter, the family photo wall that still held pictures of the four of them: Lila, Mia, their mom, and Dad, smiling bright and whole, unaware of the tragedy waiting in their future. Her throat tightened. She had avoided these photos for 3 years. She had deleted every picture from her phone, boxed up every framed print, refused to look back. Seeing them now, unhidden, unremoved, hurt worse than she expected. I couldn't bear to take them down, Elena said quietly, reading her daughter's thoughts. They're still our family, Lila. Even if things are different now. Lila nodded, unable to speak. She walked past the photo wall, moving deeper into the house, her feet carrying her on muscle memory alone. The living room was exactly as she remembered, a plush gray sectional couch, a vintage wooden coffee table scarred with childhood scratch marks, a stone fireplace where they had roasted marshmallows every winter, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with their old books and board games. On the bottom shelf, tucked beside a worn copy of Charlotte's Web, sat Mia's favorite stuffed rabbit. Frayed at the ears, one eye loose, fur-matted from years of love. It had been left exactly where Mia had abandoned it the morning she disappeared. Lila's breath caught. She froze mid-step, her gaze locked on the tiny stuffed animal. She had forgotten it was here. She had blocked it out entirely. I couldn't move that either, Elena said softly, stopping beside her. It felt wrong. Like moving it would be letting go of her all over again. Lila stepped forward slowly, kneeling down in front of the shelf. She reached out a trembling finger, brushing the soft, worn fur of the rabbit's ear. A flood of memories crashed over her, unrelenting and vivid. Mia clutching the rabbit tight every night at bedtime, refusing to sleep without it. Mia naming the rabbit Thumper after the old Disney movie. Mia dragging it everywhere she went, through mud and rain and grass, refusing to leave it behind. Until the day she did. That was the first crack in the official story. The first tiny detail Lila had buried deep in her subconscious. Mia never left Thumper behind. Not ever. If she had simply run into the woods by accident, chasing a butterfly or a squirrel like the town believed, she would have taken her rabbit with her. She had left it on the shelf. On purpose. Lila pulled her hand away quickly, like she had been burned, standing back up and swallowing hard to hold back tears. She had spent 3 years convincing herself she was overreacting, that the detail was meaningless, that grief made her see patterns where there were none. But standing here now, staring at that abandoned stuffed rabbit, the old doubt flared back to life, sharp and unignorable. Something had been wrong that day. Something more than a simple accident. I'll unpack the car, Lila said abruptly, turning away from the shelf, needing to move, needing to do something physical to ground herself. You rest. You're tired from the drive. Elena did not argue. She looked exhausted, her shoulders slumping with fatigue, the weight of the past 3 years settling over her all at once now that they were home. Thank you, baby. I'll start making lunch in a little while. Lila walked back outside into the thick summer heat, grateful for the fresh air, grateful for the distraction of manual labor. The sun hung high and bright in the cloudless blue sky, beating down on her shoulders, the humidity wrapping around her like a blanket. The front yard was quiet, the street empty, the whole town moving at the slow, unrushed pace of small-town summer. She opened the trunk of the car, pulling out her 2 suitcases and a backpack, setting them on the gravel driveway. As she straightened up, brushing dust off her jeans, she saw him. Across the street, leaning against a weathered wooden fence, stood a boy. Tall, lean, with sun-bleached dark brown hair, sharp hazel eyes, and a scar slicing gently through his left eyebrow. He wore a faded flannel shirt tied around his waist, a plain white tank top, and worn dark jeans, his boots scuffed from forest trails. Eli Hale. Lila's heart skipped a beat, a jolt of shocked familiarity shooting through her chest. She had not seen Eli in 3 years, not since the summer before Mia died. They had been best friends once, inseparable throughout childhood, neighbors since they were 5 years old. They had grown up running through these streets together, climbing the pine trees, exploring the forest trails, sharing every secret, every fear, every silly childhood dream. They had been each other's person. Until tragedy tore them apart. Eli had been the last person to talk to Mia before she vanished. He had been the one to join the search party, the one to find the first faint trail of her footprints in the soft forest dirt, the one who had stayed up for 3 straight days helping the town search, refusing to rest until Mia was found. After the funeral, everything changed. Eli had pulled away. Lila had isolated herself. They had not spoken a single word to each other since the day Mia was buried. Now he was staring at her, his expression unreadable, his body tense, like he was processing her sudden return just as fiercely as she was processing his presence. Time stretched slow and thick between them. The summer wind rustled the oak leaves, crickets chirped in the grass, a distant lawnmower hummed down the street. But Lila heard none of it. All she could focus on was Eli's eyes, locked on hers, holding 3 years of unspoken grief, unspoken questions, unspoken blame. Lila broke the stare first, turning quickly back to her suitcases, her hands shaking slightly. She grabbed her bags, slinging her backpack over one shoulder, and hurried back toward the house, desperate to escape the weight of his gaze. She did not look back. She did not dare. But she heard the faint sound of his footsteps crossing the street, slow and deliberate, growing closer. She froze on the front porch, her hand hovering over the doorknob, her heart pounding loud enough in her ears to drown out every other sound. "You're back," a deep, familiar voice said from behind her. Eli's voice was deeper now, rougher, edged with the gravel of growing up too fast, of carrying too much weight too young. It was still the voice she had known her whole life, still warm underneath the tension, still achingly familiar. Lila slowly turned around. Eli stood at the bottom of the porch steps, his hands tucked into his jeans pockets, his posture stiff and guarded. He was taller than she remembered, broader in the shoulders, no longer the lanky teenage boy she had grown up with. He was 19 now, same as her, grown up in all the ways that mattered, worn thin by the same tragedy that had broken her. "Yeah," Lila said quietly, her voice barely audible over the summer breeze. "We're back for the summer." Eli nodded slowly, his eyes sweeping over her face, searching for something she could not name. For a long moment, he said nothing, the silence stretching thick and heavy between them, filled with all the words they had never gotten to say. "I didn't think you'd ever come back," he admitted finally, his voice soft. Lila's chest ached. She did not blame him for thinking that. She had left without a goodbye, cut off all contact, blocked his number, erased every trace of their friendship. She had been too broken, too guilty, too afraid to face him. Too afraid to face the truth he might have seen that day. "I didn't either," she answered honestly. Eli's gaze drifted past her, toward the house, toward the oak tree, toward the empty swing that had once held Mia's laughter. His expression softened, a flicker of raw grief crossing his face before he masked it again, shutting down his emotions the way he always had. "Everyone's been wondering when you'd come home," he said. "Home," Lila repeated the word bitterly. "I don't know if this is home anymore." Eli's eyes locked back on hers, sharp and steady. "It's always been home, Lila. Even when you ran from it." Before Lila could respond, before she could process the weight of his words, he turned on his heel and walked away, crossing the street back to his house, his steps slow and deliberate. He did not look back. Lila stood frozen on the porch, her heart racing, her mind spinning. The summer had barely begun, and already the past was catching up to her. The ghosts she had run from were not just in the house, not just in the woods. They were in the people she had left behind. In Eli Hale. And she knew, with sudden, unshakable certainty, that this summer would not be a quiet escape. It would be a reckoning. Chapter 2 Town Whispers and Unspoken Suspicions. The first week back in Whispering Pines passed in a slow, hazy blur of summer heat, quiet routine, and unrelenting town curiosity. Lila fell into a simple, monotonous schedule to keep her mind occupied. She woke up early every morning before the heat peaked, helped her mother clean and repair the overgrown yard, repainted the peeling porch trim, weeded the wildflower beds, and unpacked the last of their leftover belongings. She avoided town as much as possible, stayed off social media, and spent most of her afternoons reading on the quiet back porch, hidden from the street's prying eyes. But you could not hide in a small town. Not truly. Whispering Pines thrived on gossip. It was the town's lifeblood, the glue that held the tiny community together. In a place where nothing drastic ever happened, old tragedies and long-awaited returns became breaking news. Lila's homecoming was the biggest thing to happen in town in years, and everyone had an opinion, everyone had a whisper, everyone had a memory to revisit. She heard them everywhere, even when she stayed inside. She heard the quiet chatter of neighbors over backyard fences, the low murmurs of townsfolk passing by on the street, the hushed conversations that cut off the second she stepped into a room. Poor girl. Never got over losing her sister. Can't blame her. That whole day was a nightmare. Still strange, though. That little girl knew better than to run into the woods alone. Lila froze every time she caught that last line. The subtle, unspoken suspicion hanging at the end of every whispered conversation. The quiet doubt no one dared to voice out loud, but everyone carried. They did not believe the accident story either. No one in town said it openly. No one accused her. No one confronted her. But the whispers lingered, soft and persistent, floating on the summer air like pine pollen. Everyone knew something had been off about Mia's disappearance. Everyone knew the official story did not quite add up. On the 8th day after their return, Elena announced she was heading into town to stock up on groceries and supplies. She paused in the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel, looking at Lila with gentle hope. "Come with me," she said. "You need to get out of the house. You can't hide here all summer, baby. It's time to start facing things again." Lila's first instinct was to refuse. To stay hidden, to stay safe, to avoid the town's staring eyes and whispered judgments. But she looked at her mother's tired, hopeful face and could not bring herself to say no. Elena was trying so hard to heal, trying so hard to rebuild their broken family, and Lila knew she owed her this much. "Okay," she agreed quietly. "I'll come." The drive into downtown Whispering Pines was short, only 5 minutes from their residential neighborhood to the main street that ran through the heart of town. Main Street was exactly as Lila remembered it, a 2-lane road lined with century-old storefronts, wooden sidewalks, hanging flower baskets overflowing with red and pink petunias, and old-fashioned street lamps that lit up the road at dusk. There was the Pine Street Diner, the tiny family-run grocery store, the vintage bookstore, the town library, the bait and tackle shop for local fishermen, and a small community park with a wooden playground and a weathered gazebo. The second they parked the car and stepped onto the wooden sidewalk, Lila felt every eye in town turn toward her. An elderly couple sitting on a diner porch bench paused their conversation to stare. A group of teenage kids loitering outside the convenience store fell silent, their heads turning in unison. A store owner wiping down his front window froze mid-motion, his gaze locked on her. Lila's shoulders tensed, her gaze dropping to her scuffed white sneakers, her hands slipping into her jeans pockets. She felt like a stranger in her own hometown, an outsider being examined and judged by everyone she had grown up with. Elena squeezed her shoulder gently, a silent word of support, and led her toward the grocery store's front doors. The inside of the grocery store was cool and dim, lined with wooden shelves stocked with local produce, homemade jams, canned goods, and basic town supplies. The air smelled of fresh bread, ripe peaches, and cedar cleaner. The owner, Mrs. Grady, a round, warm-hearted woman in her 60s who had known Lila since she was a toddler, looked up from the register, her face softening with sympathy the second she saw her. "Lila Mae Carter," she said quietly, walking around the counter to pull her into a gentle hug. "It's so good to see you home, honey. We've missed you." Lila stiffened for a split second before relaxing into the hug, grateful for the genuine kindness, the lack of judgment in Mrs. Grady's eyes. "Hi, Mrs. Grady. It's good to be back." "Healing takes time," Mrs. Grady said, pulling back to look at her face, her tone sincere. "Don't you let nobody make you feel like you gotta rush it. This town's always gonna be your home, no matter how long you stay away." Her words were warm, genuine, uncomplicated. For a moment, Lila relaxed, letting herself believe that maybe the town's whispers were not all cruel. Maybe some people just cared, even if they did not understand. They wandered the aisles slowly, grabbing groceries and household supplies, Elena chatting softly with Mrs. Grady about town updates while Lila browsed the snack aisle, her mind quiet for the first time in days. That peace broke the second she turned the corner into the canned goods aisle. Eli Hale was standing there, reaching for a can of tomato sauce, his body turned halfway toward her. Their eyes locked instantly. For a long, frozen moment, neither of them moved. The hum of the store's refrigeration units faded into background noise, the distant chatter of Elena and Mrs. Grady disappearing entirely. It was just the two of them, standing 10 feet apart in the quiet grocery store aisle, trapped in the weight of their shared past. Eli was the first to move. He lowered his hand from the shelf, standing up straight, his expression unreadable. He did not smile, did not wave, did not speak. He just stared at her, his hazel eyes intense and searching. Lila's throat went dry. She thought of the morning 3 years ago, the last morning she had spoken to him before everything fell apart. She thought of him helping Mia pick wildflowers in their front yard, laughing as Mia chased a butterfly, promising he would see her later that day. He never got to keep that promise. "Hey," Lila said finally, her voice quiet and unsure, breaking the silence. Eli nodded once, a sharp, brief movement. "Hey." The single word hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Lila hesitated, unsure what to say next. There was so much to ask, so much to apologize for, so much to explain. But 3 years of silence had built a wall between them, thick and unbreakable, and she did not know how to tear it down. "You're shopping alone?" she asked lamely, grasping for small talk, hating how awkward she felt. "My mom's working," Eli replied simply. "Just picking up a few things for dinner." His tone was polite but distant, guarded, the tone of an acquaintance, not a best friend. Lila's chest ached at the clear separation he was putting between them. Before she could reply, a new voice cut into the quiet aisle, sharp and curious. "Well, look who's back." Lila turned to see Savannah Miller standing in the aisle entrance, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her expression sharp with judgment and curiosity. Savannah had been the most popular girl in their high school growing up, entitled, gossip-hungry, obsessed with everyone else's business. She had always been subtly cruel to Lila, jealous of her quiet friendship with Eli, quick to spread rumors whenever she got the chance. Savannah sauntered forward, her eyes sweeping over Lila from head to toe, a lazy, pitying smile tugging at her lips. "Heard you were back in town. Thought you'd never dare show your face here again." Lila's jaw tightened. She had never liked Savannah, and 3 years of distance had not softened her feelings. "I live here now, for the summer." "For the summer," Savannah repeated, tilting her head mockingly. "Right. Just long enough to revisit all your favorite memories." Poor Mia. "Must be hard walking around here knowing what happened." The words were subtle, but the accusation was clear. The unspoken "you know what happened" hung in the air, thick and poisonous. Lila's blood ran cold. She opened her mouth to reply, to defend herself, but Eli stepped forward suddenly, positioning himself halfway between Lila and Savannah, his posture rigid and protective. "Savannah," he said, his voice low and sharp, warning in every syllable. "Drop it." Savannah's smug smile faltered. She had always been afraid of Eli's quiet intensity, his tendency to defend the people he cared about fiercely. She huffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," she muttered. "It's weird she's back. Everyone knows she was supposed to watch Mia that day. Everyone knows she got distracted. If she'd been paying attention." "Enough." Eli's voice dropped, cold and unyielding. "This isn't your business. Not then, not now. Leave her alone." Savannah stared at him for a long second, clearly annoyed but unwilling to push further. She scoffed, turning on her heel and walking away, muttering under her breath about overreacting and secrets and small-town drama. The aisle fell quiet again, the tension thick enough to cut. Lila stared at Eli, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. No one had defended her like that in 3 years. No one had stepped between her and the town's cruelty. No one had shut down the whispers for her. Everyone had just let the rumors linger, let the judgment fester, let her carry the guilt alone. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Eli turned back to face her, his expression softening slightly, the sharp edge of his anger fading into quiet weariness. She doesn't know what she's talking about. None of them do. But they all think it, Lila said, her voice breaking slightly. They all blame me, Eli. I was supposed to watch her. I looked away. If I hadn't, she'd still be here. For the first time in 3 years, she said the words out loud. The words she had repeated to herself every night, the words that had eaten her alive for endless months. The confession she had never dared voice to anyone. Eli's eyes softened, filled with a grief so deep it mirrored her own. He stepped closer, his voice quiet and urgent, only loud enough for her to hear. Lila, it wasn't your fault. The words were simple, but they hit her like a wave, crashing over her chest, loosening a tiny piece of the knot she had carried for 3 years. She had heard therapists say it, her mother say it, doctors say it. But hearing it from Eli, from the only other person who had been there, the only other witness to that terrible day, was different. You don't know that, she whispered. Eli stared at her, his gaze steady and unwavering. I do. Because I saw what you didn't. That day. There was something wrong. Something no one else saw. Lila's breath caught. Her heart skipped wildly, hope and fear exploding in her chest. What do you mean? Eli hesitated, his jaw tightening, like he was debating whether to speak the truth he had hidden for 3 years. He glanced toward the store entrance, making sure no one was within earshot, then leaned in closer, his voice barely a breath. Mia didn't just wander into the woods alone, he said. Someone called her. Someone lured her. Lila froze completely, every muscle in her body locking up. The world around her blurred, the grocery store fading away until all she could see was Eli's serious, determined face. All she could hear was his quiet, earth-shattering revelation. What she breathed. Eli, what are you talking about? I saw a man, Eli said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Hidden in the tree line. The second before Mia ran into the woods. I was too far to see his face. Too far to stop it. But I saw him. Lila, Mia didn't die in an accident. She was taken. The 3-year-old lie crumbled to pieces in that single moment. The official story, the town's quiet acceptance, Lila's endless self-blame, everything shattered, replaced by a terrifying, undeniable truth. Her sister's death was not an accident. It was not her fault. It was something far worse. Chapter 3: The Forest Trail and Hidden Truths. Lila left the grocery store in a daze, her mind spinning too fast to process anything around her. She barely registered paying for the groceries, barely registered walking back to the car, barely registered her mother's quiet questions about her pale face and shaken demeanor. All she could hear was Eli's voice, repeating over and over in her head, I saw a man. Someone lured her. It wasn't an accident. 3 years. For 3 years, Eli had kept the secret. For 3 years, he had carried this terrible truth alone, while Lila drowned in self-blame, while the town whispered their accusations, while everyone moved on believing a lie. Why had he not said anything sooner? The drive home was silent. Elena could sense her daughter's inner turmoil, could see the shock and confusion etched into her features, but she did not push, did not press for answers. She simply drove quietly, letting Lila process whatever had happened in the grocery store aisle. When they arrived back at the house, Lila helped carry the groceries inside mechanically, her movements numb and automatic. She put away the food, wiped down the counters, tidied the kitchen, all while her mind raced endlessly with questions. Who was the man Eli saw? Why had he lured Mia into the woods? Why had the police found no evidence of foul play? Why had Eli stayed silent for 3 entire years? The second the kitchen was clean and Elena retreated to the living room to rest, Lila grabbed her sneakers and a lightweight hoodie, slipping quietly out the back door. She knew exactly where she needed to go. The forest trail. The trailhead was a 5-minute walk from their backyard, a narrow dirt path cutting straight into the dense pine woods that bordered the town. It was the same trail Mia had taken the day she disappeared, the same trail the search parties had combed for days, the same trail Lila had avoided like a nightmare for 3 years. She had never dared set foot on it again. Until now. The summer heat was thicker inside the forest, the pine trees towering high above, blocking most of the sunlight, casting the trail in cool, dappled shadow. The air smelled of pine, damp moss, and wild berries, quiet and still, the only sounds the rustle of wind through needles, the distant chirp of birds, and the soft crunch of dirt beneath her feet. Lila walked slowly down the trail, her heart pounding, her hands trembling. Every step forward felt like stepping back into the worst day of her life. She could see it so clearly in her mind, that bright summer morning, Mia begging to go pick wild berries in the woods, Lila distracted by a text from a friend, turning away for 1 single minute. 1 minute. But according to Eli, it had never been that simple. Mia had not run off on her own. She had been called, lured, targeted. Lila walked deeper into the forest, following the winding trail until she reached the small clearing where the search had first begun. The clearing was exactly as she remembered it, a small open circle of grass, surrounded by towering pine trees, dotted with wild blackberry bushes and tiny white clover flowers. This was the last place anyone had seen Mia alive. Lila